With me, I'm Johnny Robertson. As you can see tonight, we are telling the future, and we're going to be talking about some pretty, if we were not so serious, it would be just hilarious to interview or look at some of these individuals that are in our community. And so first thing I'm going to do is I am going to forecast tonight. We are dealing with some bad weather that's coming up, and you don't have to listen to me tell you that I'm a prophet or anything of that nature. I just look at the AccuWeather radar, and we are in for some bad weather. And I know this personally. When winds get up to 50 miles an hour around my house, let me tell you what, there's no thing about it. Even if I do think that I am in a good relationship with God, I still want to be praying that if my house blows away, I don't want Lori to be back in the house or back out in the yard left without me. So I start praying things of that nature. If we're going to die, let us die together. I don't worry about the dying. I worry about getting hurt and not all the way dying. But folks, if we're in, don't you want to be in a good situation with God? Don't you want to make sure that you're in a good situation with God in times like what we're dealing with right now? And so that's our little intro this evening. And so now we're going to move to what's real. That's real a while ago, but folks, it's pretty amazing to me some of the things that go on in our community, and folk they just participate in it. They don't see through it. They have no idea that they're being involved in such a thing. What would you think if you saw preachers like the way they really are? Because I just cannot believe some of the stuff that you all put up with, and especially during this time frame. Nobody's having church. Big churches are actually preaching to the pews, and one of them locally said, now we got 7 different people that are going to speak tonight, and he told one of them, he said, speak like there's 5,000 people and there's nobody really in there. He said, speak like you're speaking to 5,000 people. And it's like, well, I can actually speak to 800 people. Just finished watching my Genesis class yesterday. I don't even know what day it is. Today is Wednesday. That would have been yesterday. And we don't have to act like we're speaking to 800 people. We know that 800 people were watching. And so it's just amazing to me some of the stuff that goes on. So I know you remember this. This is Dumb and Dumber. So who are we going to be talking about tonight? Well, this is Mike Penn, and this is one of the 7 guys that actually were involved with a assembly 2 weeks ago. They were doing the 7 sayings of Jesus or something like this. It was right after Easter, and they didn't have anybody in there, and so these guys are speaking. Now, let me go to my video of this, and we'll bring that up in just a second. We got to talking before the show, and I kind of wandered off. Let me check out where I put that. I get to be in the Dumb and Dumber group this evening just because I can't remember where I put that. Let me think just a minute. How about my YouTube page? That's where I put it. Let's just see right quick. Okay, I went off of that. Dead airtime, but it's worth it. Okay, here we go. Got some, you have volume in there? Here we go.
Put the mic on.
I don't have any volume coming out of my computer when I put HDMI in there. You don't have anything? No, I don't have the audio coming out in here. Well, Charles and I were in here arguing about Howard Stern, and so we talked right up, to the minute, or to the second, and so that's we went through all the checklists except we didn't check our audio, and that's okay. And I tell you what, Charles, if I pull the HDMI long enough to hear it, will it pick it up in your microphone? Now, you know, if I pull HDMI, that means all the picture's going to be gone. You got something to back up?
Give me 1 second.
This is worth it, folks. Okay. Tell me when.
Go ahead.
He stopped and looked into the tomb. First she stopped, then she looked. Listen, you may be hurting right now, but are you looking to Jesus? You may be going through right now, but are you looking to Jesus? The Bible says, as she wept, she looked. If you keep looking, you're going to get your vision adjusted, amen? If you keep looking at God through this whole situation, he's going to fix your vision, amen? If you keep looking at God. At the beginning of the year, Bishop Penn prophesied this thing and told us that this year, God is going to take some of us from sight to vision.
Okay. Now, this is basically our point tonight. This is going to be one of them. I'm bringing it back to you, Charles. Okay. Now, y'all, seriously, Mike Penn prophesied this? I think we need to do a little bit of investigation. Here's Mike Penn. Here's one of his cohorts, and he's telling us that at the beginning of the year, Mike Penn prophesied this. Now, what I'm saying is, y'all, if you believe this, this is Dumb and Dumber. And you might say, Johnny, prove that. Look at this, y'all. How is it that you all do not know over at Galilee House of Worship that folk were selling off their stocks in January? That's the first of the year. Now, why are you just now telling us that Mike Penn knew about it? Why didn't Mike Penn actually tell y'all so that y'all could get ahead of it yourselves, make plans and everybody have masks and all that kind of stuff? Now, this is Richard Burr. He is a Republican, and he is an individual who sold off his stocks in early January, or in mid-January, late January. This is Kelly Loeffler. She also sits on the Senate. She sold off her stocks. And let me ask you this. Would they be prophets? Are they prophesying? Or are they getting insider information? You know what I'd like to know from Michael Penn more than that his members think that he prophesied this and they were all ready? How about you tell us when it's going to be over? I mean, wouldn't that be a whole lot better than you pretending that you actually knew, and you got these guys that you load up when nobody's even at church, nobody's assembled, and you load these guys up and they start telling how wonderful Mike Penn is and how his prophetic ability let them know ahead of time what's going to happen. That's just not the case. We all know this, and I'm saying if you're sitting here listening and you're a member of this church, you basically need to think, now wait a minute. Oh, it gets better. Now, this is outside the U.S. news. This is BBC, and they're covering this, have been covering it for quite some time. Richard Burr, chairman of Senate Intelligence Committee, while Kelly Loeffler sits on the Senate Health Committee. And both of these people were insider trading, and they actually knew about it in January. Investigation by the Daily Beast found Ms. Loeffler, who sits on the Senate Health Committee, and her husband sold millions of dollars in stock beginning on January 24th. Mike Penn, we just now learned that he knew about it at the first of the year. Why didn't y'all come out on television? I mean, this would have been great news here in Martinsville. Right here, the gatekeeper, he used to call himself the gatekeeper here in Martinsville. He went to Mr. Cha-Cha's school, and just, seriously, who in the world believes such a thing? Beginning January 24th, the day her panel received a private briefing on coronavirus from top U.S. public health officials. Now, all right, so first of the year prophetess coming up. Are you ready? Here's somebody who actually we know knew. Is she a prophet? Did she prophesy? Dianne Feinstein. They're also selling up to $6 million worth of stocks in January. Now, seriously, folks, I want you to think about this. When did Mike Penn tell y'all this? And is it the case that if you knew about it in January, that it is a prophecy? it could be that Mike Penn knows how to use the internet, but I hate to tell you he doesn't, because this same guy that's raising him up so high, we ever figure out that what the audio is going to be? Or, because I have 2 or 3.
Can you have a speaker up to that?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
Actually, when we go HDMI, it takes over my audio. It's like a default sort of thing. And the man who can fix it ain't with us.
Right.
So,
All right, but my question is, can we try to hook a speaker up to that?
can we what now?
Try to hook a speaker up to that?
Sure. I mean, I can see the volume is only sending out digital, and I don't have any analog, so it's just like a default setting. Now, if our tech guy's watching and he can tell me how to override that, Charles, that'd be good. So basically, I'm going to have a look at it right quick. Let's see. Let's see how this works. So this guy, he actually tells that Mike Penn learned after 20 years how to do online so that they would have this in place. And it's like a very good statement that you're just now learning how to use the internet. All right.
You're to the point I don't let anything get me anymore.
Yeah, this is not going to work though. I'm saying by default it turns all of my audio into the HDMI unless we do some little something. Let me just see. I want to see what I'm going to be missing over here. This is not going to be too bad, Charles. I'll just do without it. These other plays are things that we played before. I can just bring it up on my screen and show you how this goes. Caleb was at Lorenzo Hall's church, and they were doing car church as well. And so here's footage. It doesn't even really have to have audio for you to be able to tell what's going on. Caleb rolls up on a Sunday like he's moving from Martinsville. He preached in Martinsville, and then he's going to Danville to preach during the worship assembly, and he rolls up on car church. And you can see him out there in the parking lot. Caleb ends up asking them, have y'all actually healed? Do y'all believe in healing? And they said, yeah, we believe in healing. He said, y'all healed anybody? And they said, ain't nobody sick coming up in here yet. Now, wait a minute. If y'all can actually heal, why are you wearing all this garb? Why is it that this guy's got a mask on and they're acting like everybody else? So, you see what we're saying? This evening, we're trying to tell you that there is no prophetic power going on over there. Now, y'all, I just wonder if you are not being hoodwinked on several different levels when you really start talking about it. Dianne Feinstein, she knew about this in January, and we're being told by Michael Penn's people that he prophesied this. Are you seriously taking that in and actually hearing us go across the air and question Michael Penn? Now, y'all, we all know that I did that on this set one time with a preacher named Brown. I can't remember his first name, but he ended up saying that they were going to be sending this 18-wheeler load of food over to Africa or whatever, and they wanted to know where I was going to participate. And I said, I don't believe this guy. He can't do miracles. There's no miracles associated with him. And he ended up falling into the trap of Acts 13 that Paul struck somebody blind that was trying to mess up his ministry. And so I basically challenged him, and he said, in 2 weeks, you'll be blind. Well, several years later, I had cancer, but I've still got my eyesight. So that's, you see what we're talking about? When is enough going to be enough? I mean, how long does it take for people's attention to be turned around and ask the question, why is it that all of this is constantly going on? Top California Democrat, Ms. Feinstein, and her husband, meanwhile, reportedly sold stock worth $1.5 million, $6 million in biotech company between the end of January. Now, here's my question. Did they have a spiritual advisor? Did somebody prophesy to them in order for them to unload these stocks? No. They had inside information. Michael Penn or none of the individuals that are out there that are claiming to have the ability to discern the future, none of them knew this was going to happen. And here is that question again. Why not tell us something useful? This dude that is up there preaching to an empty building, why not ask? I mean, just think about that. Why don't they ask Mike Penn to tell us when it's going to be over? That would be useful instead of him, I knew it before. Well, good. Pat you on the back. Give you a star. How about you tell us what's going to happen next? Something of that nature. And y'all, there are things going on that individuals don't know about. I would like to send a message over there and ask him this question in regard to his prophetic ability. I would also like to know what's going on in the China Sea while we all are watching coronavirus. You know, I don't get my news from the United States as a whole. I go outside the United States and listen to other news because, you know, there's a lot of times we're actually selling commercials here in the United States, in case you hadn't caught on. Who's basically got all the attention right now? MSNBC, CNN, and Fox. They got all the attention, and do you think they want to let it go? Because what y'all are doing is you're getting a steady intake of commercials. Buy this, buy this, buy this, and you wait through that stuff, and then you go back, and they got you all revved up. But what's going on in the South China Sea? Do you not realize that we actually have warships out there in the South China Sea? Do you not realize that we're actually going back and forth with China right now because China has claimed a particular island group that the Philippines claim, Taiwan claims. There's just, there's mineral rights associated with any land or any area that you can actually attach yourself to. And once you get the mineral rights, what do? You start drilling for oil. Is that not what everybody's after? So here we are. You don't hear anything about this, do you? We just hear about the coronavirus. And what did the Chinese say to the United States when the warship went through? And when activity starts happening in South China Sea. Just because South China Sea is named South China Sea doesn't mean China owns it and does not mean it's their territory. So what'd they say? They've sent a message back over here and said, why don't y'all pay attention to the coronavirus and stay out of the South China Sea? Well, why would we want to do that? While y'all are basically trying to take over areas that are in dispute. Now, when I listen to TV in India, you might say, how is it that you even know about TV in India? Because I know a guy who has been working in India for the last 20 years. He's 84 years old. He's the individual, Jim Waldron, that gave us all those books. And he sends me to the sites that people who are familiar with India, they know the news sites over there. And so you hear them calling it the Wuhan flu or the Wuhan virus. These individuals not backing down. In India, they're actually calling for a boycott on Chinese goods. Why? Because they know where it came from. They know what's going on. These individuals are plugged in a different way. It's not in their interest like it is in our country. So here's what you might be saying, Johnny, why are you bringing this up? The reason I'm bringing it up, if we've got prophets here in town, how about you actually tell us what is going on? What's actually up? Help us with something that is significant for us. Not going to hear it. Why? Because this is about you paying your money while you are still under quarantine or whatever. If you can be convinced that Mike Penn has inside information, will you pay for it? You see, that's the same thing that's happening when you're on these different news outlets. You're dependent on these news outlets to give you information that puts you ahead of the game, and really all you're doing is sitting and listening to commercials and getting ribbed up. When you watch or listen to Mike Penn, it's the same thing. You're plugged in. He figured out how to do live stream, and you're plugged in because you think Mike Penn he can put you ahead of the game. Really? Do you not see you're dumb and dumber? He didn't know anything back then. Why wasn't that being alerted, sounding out? Now, you might be saying, okay, Johnny, you got my attention. Now let's get some Bible on it. You ever pay attention to your New Testament, just basically the idea of sorcerers that were running around in the New Testament days? No. I have the verses up here. You can just jot these down. Just start with Acts. You don't even have to go out of Acts. Acts 8:9, Acts 8:11. We're going to look at them. Acts 13:6, Acts 13:8. Then you actually have Acts 19, it doesn't call them sorcerers, calls them exorcists. Now, who do you think, what community are these folk involved with? Do you ever stop and think about that? Because I know I'm having a hard time getting through into your mind that, well, how is it that a religious group of individuals would be involved in this kind of activity? How does that work? No, when we think about that, when we think about somebody with sleight of hand, a magician or something like that, we don't think about religious people. Why? Because religious people don't want you to think like that. Why, a man of God, wouldn't he be afraid to present that he was a man of God if he were really a sorcerer? Do you think these guys really care about what God says? Man, I'd be scared to death to be out there promoting a church that's not in God's Word. I'd be scared to death telling you that I knew about the coronavirus before it ever came along. And then number two, I'd be scared to death that somebody's going to ask, when's it going to be over? Bishop Penn, now he used to be pastor, now he's bishop, he changed religions altogether. How come it is that Baptist wasn't good enough for him? All you folk that used to be Galilee Missionary Baptists, they're building a new facility out there on 57. How come it is that y'all changed from being Baptist to apostolic? Do you not realize that that's a joke? Why didn't Pastor Penn know the difference between being a Baptist and an apostolic back there when he was building that $4.7 million building? You mean to tell me that he was in the wrong religion and now he's been ordained as a bishop in a totally different religion? Give me a break, y'all. What in the world? Now look at this, Acts 19:11. Here's what's going on in the New Testament. And God wrought special miracles by the hand of Paul. Now you got Lorenzo Hall, they're out there on the parking lot. And they hadn't had any sick people come up in here, but look at Paul. And God wrought that word wrought means worked special miracles by the hand of Paul, so that from his body were brought unto the sick handkerchiefs. Now, man, that piece of audio where Caleb went out to Bishop Paul's church, it was so funny because that guy said, well, we hadn't had any sick people come up in here yet, and nobody need healing. What? Nobody needs healing? People would be making a line from Florida all the way to here. We would be seeing I-85, I-95 shut down as they were coming out of Florida trying to get here if Lorenzo Hall was actually doing healing like this. But here, watch this. This guy actually made a huge mistake when he said, had nobody that need healing come up in here. Well, look at this. That's not how it was in the New Testament. Paul was doing special miracles. God was working special miracles through him. Now watch how it happened. So that from his body were brought unto the sick handkerchiefs or aprons. And the disease departed from them, and the evil spirits went out of them. So what you're actually supposed to be expecting, if that stuff was happening today, and this is BTW's show, they used to have Expect a Miracle. I watched them actually have somebody call in talking about they was healed of being blind, and you would have thought that atomic bomb went off with Chad and Rodney. They were sitting there and said, no, it was Chad and this guy, blonde-headed guy that used to have on there, looked like he had a bowl put over his head for his haircut. They just went berserk that somebody, it's like you're on a show called Expect a Miracle and you act surprised when somebody end up being healing. I mean, that ought to tell you, again, this is all a bunch of foolishness, fake. So here you go. Why is it that a guy can tell Caleb with a straight face, nobody needing healing has come up in here yet, and when the book you're reading actually says they took the healing ability out to the people who were sick? Now, here we go now. You're saying, well, now wait a minute, Johnny. You're talking about our pastor that could he possibly actually be faking? Have you not read the Bible at all, the New Testament at all? The religious people were the ones that were faking. That's who we read about. You don't hear Paul actually in Athens, and he's on the same exact spot that Socrates was on when he was getting himself into trouble. And Paul is talking to these philosophers. You don't see them doing all this stuff. You see the religious people. Then certain vagabond Jews. You hear how the Holy Spirit had Luke talk about these individuals that were fake? Vagabonds. How do you like that word? You look it up and it actually is a word from which we get our English word gypsy. These folk were roaming around figuring out ways to make merchandise out of individuals who are dumb and dumber. That's just basically what we're dealing with. You folk out there that are listening to a guy that wants to be in Mike Penn's place, these guys that are trying to do their pastor internship, that's where Lorenzo Hall came from. Bishop Kellum had things going down there at Mount Olivet, whatever it was called. On 58, Lorenzo Hall comes up and says, you know what, I had a vision. And Bishop Kellum says, no, we're not going to hear your vision. And he's like, well, wait a minute now. The Holy Spirit don't just reside on you alone, and he took half of his church out there, and look how much bigger reach out ministry is than Bishop Kellum ever got to be. Now, you see that kind of stuff going on? You can't see through that. You all are not old enough, or your thinking process can't remember all that. I remember that very well. Reach out ministry started up, and it came right out of Bishop Hall's church, Bishop Kellum's church. Now, look at this. Then certain of the vagabond Jews, exorcists, took upon them to call over them which had evil spirits the name of the Lord Jesus, saying, we adjure you by Jesus whom Paul preacheth. And there were 7 sons of one Sceva, a Jew, and chief of the priests, which did so. Now, I know that I know I have to work hard. To break through this spell that you're under, everybody in town pretty much is under it as far as the majority is concerned. Now, everybody don't go to church even when Corona's not around, but y'all are under the spell. I've been up here on how many shows with Tony Jones, and every time Larry Serber would blaspheme, Tony move his chair. Under the spell, lightning gonna strike. Seriously? You think that's how this all works? That's how people are. Superstitious. They just get all up and excited when somebody starts announcing that somebody saw something or whatever. That's exactly how it was in the New Testament. And who was it? It was individuals associated with chief of the priests, the religious people. So why is it that you're having such a hard time just like taking it in just a little bit? Let it seep in. I tell you what, tonight around 11, when your house starts shaking, when that 60-mile-an-hour wind is supposed to get here, when that starts happening, think about, I hope you roll and tumble tonight. When that starts happening, oh man, Johnny told us this storm was going. No, I didn't. This is the news, y'all. This is AccuWeather. Daniel told me that it was coming. So I looked it up. Sure enough, there it is. When your house starts shaking and the wind starts blowing, and let's say it hails a little bit, and you waked up with a big clap of thunder, I hope that it comes into your mind right now with your superstitious self. Maybe something's fixing to happen. I had a video, Charles, where a guy called in about 2 months ago, and you were doing a show, and the guy said, maybe Johnny Robertson then was right. Maybe Church of Christ was right. Maybe they were worried about this coronavirus. They said, maybe this all came on. Maybe we should have been listening. Maybe you should be listening. And guess what? Johnny Robertson's not right. The Bible's right. That's the part that gets people, is that we're telling you what the Bible says. We're telling you your religious leaders are the individuals who were the worst. Now, you get this. I said this biblically. The religious leaders in the Bible were the scoundrels. They were the worst. And it's hard for you to get it in your head that those individuals are the bad people. For some reason, you basically think that it's got to be coming from some other direction. It can't be religious folk. Now, let's go back and let's examine some of these other scriptures, because I asked you why there's so many, and I gave you one. And now we're fixing to have a look at the others. Let's go to our Bible program and let's look at Acts chapter 8, verse 9. Now, if this is not happening in Martinsville, I don't know how in the world you could actually find a situation where it was more prevalent than what we just showed. Acts chapter 8, verse 9. Here we go. Acts chapter 8, verse 9. Let's bring this down a little bit so you can basically continue to be with us. Acts 8, verse 9. But there was a certain man called Simon. You getting this? Everybody knows Simon the sorcerer. They even actually call this kind of behavior simony. So here we go. But there was a certain man called Simon, which before time in the same city used sorcery and bewitched the people of Samaria, giving out that himself was some great one. No. People wouldn't do that, would they? I don't understand why you basically think that people wouldn't do that. We just got through showing you the account with Mike Penn, and we even were so determined to do it that we just took all of our background off. We went totally to a black screen, Just me here. None of our background material or none of our techniques, that we're able to have as a result of knowing how to use the internet, as Mike Penn's guy said. And we just listened to this guy say, Pastor Penn prophesied this. So, no, it wouldn't happen. Somebody wouldn't use fakery and stuff like that in order to bewitch us. Are you bewitched? Don't you think? Now, I know there's some people sitting at home while I'm talking about Mike Penn. Is he Pastor Penn, or is he Bishop Penn, or is he Dr. Penn? We showed over and over that he doesn't have a Bachelor of Arts, that Cha-Cha school called Teamwork doesn't have the right to actually bestow a Bachelor of Arts, so he doesn't have a doctor's degree. And he's not Pastor Penn, he's Dr. Penn. No, he's not Dr. Penn, he changed to Bishop Penn. When y'all gonna catch up? Mr. Penn is bewitching y'all. Now, I know some of you sitting at home saying, man, Johnny, don't you know you're not supposed to touch God's anointed? Bishop Penn is God's anointed. Well, then what's going to happen to me? I've been talking about Mike Penn for 10 years, and nothing's happened. I'm saying nothing happened to me from Mike Penn. He just continues to get richer off of y'all. And now here in 2020, while everybody's quarantined up in the house and nobody even in the building, he's got this guy telling you, Mike Penn saw this coming. Well, Mike Penn didn't warn us. And you're saying, well, Johnny, don't touch God's anointed. Wait a minute. How do you know who God's anointed is when you got all these individuals that are actually pretending that they have power of God? But there was a certain man called Simon, which before time in the same city used sorcery and bewitched the people of Samaria, giving out that he himself was a great one, to whom all gave heed, from the least to the greatest, saying, this man is the great power of God. Wow. This man is the great power of God. The great Mike Penn prophesied. I guess he called up Richard Burr, and he called up Miss Loeffler, and he called up Diane Feinstein, and he told them all, y'all need to unload those stocks because she's coming. Is that what happened? Mike Penn, the spiritual advisor now for all these big senators and congressmen? No. Folk, these people in the intelligence community, they knew this stuff was going on in China before the first of the year. Why did God wait so late in the first place to tell Mike Penn? Because that is late. This information was out there well before this. Now, let's keep reading. And to him they had regard, because that of a long time he had bewitched them with sorceries. I wish that I had the ability to just for 1 minute influence you to call Mike Penn and ask him, one of y'all, call Mike Penn and ask him when this is going to be over. I mean, he just had it announced that he prophesied at the beginning. What's so big about telling us when it's going to be over? Well, you're probably going to say, we don't have his cell phone number. I'm sure you don't. Call him on his house phone. I mean, surely you have the sense over there to look up the white pages and find out his house phone number. Guarantee he's not going to answer. If he does answer, you call up. We've got our phone lines up. My cell phone is sitting right here. Everybody knows my cell phone, 276-806-2150, 2150, 806-2150. That's all you have to remember. Now, anybody going to take us up on that and call Mike Penn? I would flood his phone. I would get that thing just blowing off the hook. Text him. Send him a message on Facebook. Ask Pastor Penn. Dr. Penn, wait a minute. Just give them all of them. Pastor, Dr., Bishop, Mike Penn. When is Corona going to be over? You already had your guy tell us when it was going to start, that you knew ahead of time. When's it going to be over? Guess what? You know nobody's going to call him. All right, let's go to our next spot. That was Acts 8. Let's look at Acts 13, verse 6. What? You really mean this is this prevalent? Here we go again. Acts chapter 13, verse 6. Look this up. Now, I know what happens. You watch sometimes for the entertainment value associated with this, putting Mike Penn on there and calling him Dumb and Dumber here and this other pastor. And you're basically saying that's, call somebody up, tell them that we're doing that. While we're doing that, while you're calling somebody up, let me make sure my Facebook is actually activated right quick. It'll just take me a second, and we'll go back to that picture later. Let's see. I know I got a notification here. Okay, let's see. All right, now we're all in sync. Now then, look at this. Acts 13, verse 6. And when they had gone through the aisle unto Paphos, they found a certain sorcerer, a false prophet, a Jew, whose name was Bar Jesus. Look at this. Who is it that's doing this stuff? It's religious people. You got a sorcerer, a false prophet. Don't touch God's anointing. Everybody thinks Mike Penn is a prophet. Don't touch God's anointing. We're touching all over him right now. Well, it don't matter. It don't matter. He's not even meeting. We're meeting. Just had a fantastic Bible study. I just hated to leave. We were talking about individuals in Corinth and the behavior that was going on in those days and the division that was happening. We're seeing all this division right now in the churches of Christ. Now, they weren't talking about Mike Penn's church in 1 Corinthians. Wasn't no such thing as Baptist churches back then. Well, what is Mike Penn? You know, when you get down to it, you start putting this Galilee House of Worship up. You know what that is? That's going generic. We don't want anybody to know what kind of doctrine we got up in here. Well, I see you folk over at Galilean, not Galilean, but Galilee Missionary Baptist. It actually says out there on the sign on Highway 57, drive out there sometime. It's before you get to Dyer Store Road. You actually see the sign that says First. They call themselves the First Church. Galilean Missionary Baptist Church. Building on it right now. Well, wonder if they'll be meeting, and if they start meeting, if they get that thing finished. Y'all need to call up Mike Penn and find out if they're going to get it finished. The First Church, where you people left from, get it finished, and maybe y'all can meet over there in that building. Maybe they got more courage and conviction, and y'all can meet over in that building. See how this stuff goes? Silly, isn't it? I know those people that are building that building. They know that Mike Penn is not real. He is actually, look at this. If he claims that he knew when it was going to start ahead of time, well, he's no smarter than Dianne Feinstein. So that doesn't make him a big deal, does it? He's no smarter than Richard Burr. And both of them actually made money with their knowledge. Mike Penn still got that ATM machine in his building, and nobody's coming through there. How are they getting money? Online church. They did have car church on Easter, but now they're preaching to an empty building, and they're actually hoping that their people are tuning in. I wonder how many of you are tuning in tonight who are members. Now let's see how this happens. Certain sorcerer, a false prophet, a Jew whose name was Bar Jesus, which was with the deputy of the country, Sergius Paulus, a prudent man who called for Barnabas and Saul and desired to hear the word of God. Now, I just gave you my cell phone. Let me give it to you again. 806-2150. Are you a prudent person? Now it says here that this man, this deputy of the country, Sergius Paulus, he was a prudent man. Let's give you a little treat here. Let's look up what the word prudent means in the original, because you might not be familiar with the word prudent. Well, it actually comes from a Greek word that means mentally put together. How about that? You're a sageist. Now, a sage is an individual that you basically go to for wisdom. Alexander Campbell was called the Sage of Bethany. He's one of the most well-known individuals of his day. Debated people from England, that people were known all over the world. He took them on, and he debated several individuals of that nature that were very, very well known. He actually spoke to a convened Congress. Which one of the preachers that you know actually was asked about school administration and things like that by a convened Congress? This is a sage. Also, it means prudent. Now, how about that? Let's look at that one more time. Mentally put together. How about you? You mentally put together? So, Sergius Paulus, he basically is a mentally put together, and he called for Barnabas and Saul. Here's my question. You need some information that's from the Bible? Why is it that so many of these religious people were actually hoodwinking these individuals, making them think that they're some great man of God, making them think that they already knew about the coronavirus? The reason why is because most of the folk around here are not mentally put together. Isn't it about time that you get it together? I mean, you're paying this pastor to be your shepherd, and you're sitting at home. Where's the shepherd? Where's the flock? Well, the flock's not together. This guy was trying to say, well, we're together. We're just in different places, but we're still together. How do you know? See, none of this makes sense as you go through. Now, watch this. Here we go now. So what do Paul and Barnabas do to this guy who is questioning whether they're telling the truth? Now, you think about this. I'm questioning Mike Penn's ability to tell you the truth. I'm saying that he is just like these sorcerers in the New Testament. Now, what did Paul and Barnabas do to the guys that said that about him? Look at it. But Elymas the sorcerer, for so is his name by interpretation, withstood them, seeking to turn away the deputy from the faith. Look at that. That's what we're telling you about, the faith. There's only one faith. Well, what is the faith? Then Saul also, which is called Paul, filled with the Holy Ghost, set his eyes on him and said, O full of all subtlety and all mischief, thou child of the devil, thou enemy of all righteousness. The faith is righteousness. Wilt thou not cease to pervert the right ways of the Lord? Do you not see that the faith is actually being called the right ways of the Lord? Who's teaching the right ways of the Lord tonight? Which one of us? Well, what did they end up doing? They called him several different names, and then they said, Now behold, the hand of the Lord is upon thee, and thou shalt be blind, not seeing the sun for a season. Now, this is what Mike Penn should do to me. I should be struck blind. Now, I've already showed up at Mike Penn's place many times. The only thing going to happen to me is I'll get a restraining order. I'm saying, after we went to J.C. Richardson's church in February, the sheriff actually called up and said that the pastors were thinking about actually getting restraining orders, no trespassing restraining orders, in ahead of time. What? How can you get you can serve me with something before I've done anything? Now, you can actually get a restraining order before I've done anything, but you can't actually have these blanket charges against me for trespassing when I hadn't even been there. But the very idea that was being said, I have that on tape, that it was being said that was an idea. Get some kind of paperwork filed with the county ahead of time, and that was, it was a pretty nice call from the sheriff. He basically saying that it's going to be on your sons too, and he said, if they were to try to get another job, it's going to be kind of difficult, especially if you get a secular job. You got this file full of no trespassing notices on you or restraining orders. That's not going to look good to an employer, especially when you were a preacher. Well, guess what? I don't know why it wouldn't look good. That's what Paul was doing everywhere. He was going up in there trying to expose these guys. Now, why? Let's look at why. The reason why you have to expose these guys is verse 10. Look at this word subtlety. What does that word mean? Now, remember, prudent is well put together, mentally put together, mentally well put together. Are you mentally well put together? Tonight when the storm hits, are you going to know what's up, what's possible? Listen, y'all, 60-mile-an-hour wind is nothing to be sneezed at. And sometimes with that, you just don't know. Are you mentally well put together? Do you realize tonight could be your night? Do you realize that you might not see tomorrow? Do you realize you could actually get corona? And you say, chances of getting corona is pretty slim. You don't believe that. You don't even go to church anymore. So it sounds like you're scared to death already. But you got the great Mike Penn up here prophesying. Why can't he just tell you which one of y'all's going to get sick? Wouldn't that work? Everybody else come to church, and the one that's going to get sick, you stay at home. Well, how are we going to know? We got a prophet amongst us. That's how this works. Now, when Saul wanted to find out where his lost donkeys were, they went to Samuel, and they asked him, and he told them. Just like that. That's what a prophet is able to do. Now, Mike Penn could save all of y'all a lot of trouble, a lot of anguish and anxiety. He could just simply tell you which one of you is going to be sick. And then the rest of you could come back in. But wait a minute. This is not how this works. Let's look up our word subtle. All right. Here is the word subtle. You looking at this with me? Let's get our information up here. He was very subtle. Now, let me just back up here and get all of our business. We want to make sure that you know who we're talking about. We have this individual who is mentally put together. He is the person who's wanting the truth. You got a sorcerer, and this individual's name is Elymas. And notice what Paul says to him and the words that he uses, and this is why you all can't figure things out, is because individuals are so subtle. Now, I'm having a look at Greek here, verse 10. Let's look at verse 10. And full of subtlety, here it is, from an obsolete primary verb, and it basically has the meaning of decoy, a trick, bait, wily, craft, deceit, guile, subtle. Man, you know what? What does that sound like? Does that sound like a pastor? It does to me. Guys can get you to put money in the plate to pay for a church that's not even in this book. They can get you to pay for a sermon where they don't even tell you what to do to be saved. And you don't, the guy is so smart, so subtle, so crafty that you don't even notice that he's pastor one day, doctor the next, and bishop the next. You can't figure out what to call this dude. Just pastor, doctor, bishop, Mike Penn. Well, in the New Testament, these individuals who are subtle, crafty, full of guile, Wile the coyote, you remember that? Wily, hard to catch. They called them false prophets. And we're just sitting here, I mean, surely you're thinking through this. Why couldn't pastor, doctor, bishop, what's next? Why couldn't he tell us who's going to get sick next? And that person just stay home, and the rest of us, the rest of y'all could go and assemble and get his ATM working again. That would be so simple, wouldn't it? No. He is way too subtle for that to happen. He's way too crafty. He's way too wily. That's what this word means. And so what did they basically do? They struck this guy blind. He was tricking people. And he was actually had a mentally put together individual under his control. So here we go. You're in good company tonight. You see, let's do this again. Okay, Johnny, I don't like the way you're talking to us. Okay, I get that. Caleb actually was invited into Leonard R. Jones' apartment today, and Mr. Jones, former president of the NAACP, Caleb goes up in, talks with him in his apartment, and he says, Caleb, you're not talking to people from California out here. He said, you're making this a little bit difficult. Let's break it down. I know that Leonard R. Jones, he has been a pastor somewhere too. He watches the show. Let's break it down and take advice from Leonard R. Jones. Here we go. Now, I know it's hard. You may be saying, John, I don't like the way you're talking. Okay, well, let's get it together here. You may be a person who is prudent. I could actually be talking to you tonight, and you're mentally put together. And because you are mentally put together, you find that you actually realize for the first time that maybe Mike Penn and pastors like him who are claiming all these powers, but the churches are not meeting. There's not nobody coming up in here sick, so Lorenzo Hall could do any healing. They haven't come. You're mentally put together to the point where you realize that Paul sent out aprons and handkerchiefs from his own body to the sick people. Why not have a couple of handkerchiefs? Now listen, how about some of y'all? I know it's difficult, but it is possible. How about some of y'all that go to Reach Out, some of y'all that go to Mike Penn's church, how about y'all, I see them wipe their brow with those handkerchiefs, how about y'all get a handkerchief, one of them that he left laying around, and give it to a nurse, and just let her put it in her purse, and she can take it with her, and when somebody comes up with the coronavirus, you just take that handkerchief from Dr. Penn out, Bishop Penn, whatever you're going to call him, take one out from Lorenzo Hall, and just say, would you like to try it? I mean, it couldn't hurt. Well, you probably get in trouble from the health department because once you get past your church walls, the health department don't put up with that foolishness. They know that these guys ain't got no power, and they'll probably end up doing something disciplinary to you because you believe Mike Penn, and you know that individuals in the first century named Paul, you could take something from him, an apron or a handkerchief. Now, you know, folks, you know I'm making fun. We had a guy come all the way in here from California, Armando DeLoa. You can look it up, the DeLoa-Robertson debate. He came all the way from California to take up for the apostolics, just like Mike Penn. And he didn't bring any aprons. He didn't bring any handkerchiefs. And I asked him, I said, Armando, do you have any handkerchiefs? Are you planning on expect a miracle? You planning on anything happening? He didn't have any. Had to go down to Walmart, made a fool out of himself. Had to go walk down to Walmart, bought a big old stack of bandanas, and went over to, we talked him into going to Kentucky Fried Chicken in Reedsville and waiting for somebody to come and give him an apron or whatever. And one of the guys that worked with us, he went down there and got him on camera. Wasn't nobody coming. Why? You think anybody expects a miracle from any of you guys just because somebody flew in here from California and claims to have power that Benny Dodson claims he had? This guy was a cohort with Benny Dodson, went over and worshiped with Benny Dodson at, I don't know the names of these Pentecostal churches. They change so much. His may be Mount Olivet, and Bishop Kellum, that's already passed, his may be something else on 58. One of them is on Old Chatham Road, and the other's on 58. Neither one of them have any power, and neither did Armando de Loa. So you see what I'm doing? Maybe you're well put together. And I want you to think about this too. If you're in Mike Penn's church, and you got Baptist relatives, you got Wesleyan relatives, you got people in the Christian church relatives, you've got Methodist relatives, you got Catholic relatives, they're all listening to this too. They know that y'all been doing all this talk about healing all these years and all this Holy Ghost power. They know that all of that's been going on, and maybe you're one of the relatives and you're well put together. Why don't you call some of these folk up and ask them? I mean, we got the dude right here. We had him play that Mike Penn was a prophet, and Prophet Mike Penn told us when this stuff was going to happen. So here you are. As we said, Leonard R. Jones said, break it down. Let's break it down. Let's say you're mentally put together. Is it raining already? I'm telling you, it's raining. So, all right. So now, here we go. And windy. The guy's been going in and out, looking at the weather. So here we go. Now, I told you what was going to happen. Is that not right? I don't have to have a crystal ball, and I sure don't have to have no doctor's degree or have folk come in and lay hands on me from the Apostolic Church in order to tell you it's going to rain. Now, it's already started. Wind's blowing. Now, here's my question. Are you mentally put together? Are you prudent? Are you paying attention tonight? The corona is not the only threat out there. Are you going to look up this business in the South China Sea and see what's going on? While we're over here paying attention to all of this stuff that we're getting fed to us on the news, the Chinese in other news outlets, not U.S. news outlets, you've seen that story? Did you know that we actually had ships in the South China Sea? Did you know that they had deployed jets from China and warships from China to get out into the South China Sea to make sure that we don't mess up their plans to take over a certain area where mineral rights haven't been absolutely claimed? They plan on drilling for oil there. What do you think minerals are? Or what mineral do you think they're going to try to get in the South China Sea? It's oil. What does everybody want? Oil. But see, you don't know anything about that because you're looking this direction and this stuff is going on. So are you mentally put together? The real threat may not even be the sickness in our area. There's not really that much sickness in our area when you get down to it. As a matter of fact, when you get down to it, if you go to the CDC's website, you'll find out 250,000 people died last year from negligence in hospitals and doctors' care. 250,000, man, that's a pandemic. We need to do something about the hospital. Shut them down. They're killing people every which way. No, we got, I'm just to say this, if we were to have 50 cases in and around us of coronavirus, it would just be folk just having apoplectic fits. They would have to have psychologists and psychiatrists and analysts, the whole bit. Well, we'd have to resurrect Nietzsche to get us straight. The guy who said that God is dead. Man, what in the world? See how that goes? Are you put together better than that? Are your children watching you? I've seen some of the silliest videos around here. I always check in on Mercy Crossing. I saw them doing car church, and what I basically saw was kids was just up in their car seat dancing because all the music. So what are you learning over there? Well, you learn you don't have to go inside. You can stay out in your car and get your groove on. So when I grow up, little girl, when she grows up, she basically had her groove on as a result of being over there out in the parking lot. Man, seriously? You can't see through this? Are you not mentally put together? And are you not seeing that I'm making fun of Mike Penn? And are you not seeing that in this particular case, that the deputy saw through this? What happened when Paul struck the sorcerer blind? Then the deputy, when he saw what was done, believed, being astonished at the doctrine of the Lord. The faith is now called the doctrine of the Lord. Are you following the doctrine of the Lord? Well, if you are, how come it's not in this book? This business about having your elevated pastor, doctor, what is he, bishop? That's just not in the Bible. That stuff is not in the Bible that way. And you know what? I shouldn't be able to get home tonight. He should be able to strike me blind from a distance. If Jesus and God is the same, that's what this guy was saying. God's the same. He's the same. But y'all ain't in your church, are you? See how we're doing? Now, folks, this is where we tell you what you need to do. First thing you need to do is you need to make sure you're listening to somebody who truly will tell you the truth. Well, you might say, I don't have anybody to listen to. I don't have anybody to talk to. My cell phone number, 276-806-2150. You can talk to me tonight. While you're hearing that wind howling around your house, you don't have anybody to call. My phone is on all the time. I can actually see it light up. I know I won't go to sleep before 1 o'clock. I never do after TV. And generally somebody's talking to me because I have individuals that talk to me from Alaska and from Oregon and Arizona, so we're on different time zones. I've been expecting a call from Colorado. I have another friend that's in Bangkok, Thailand. I can talk to him at 5 in the morning. So you never know when somebody's going to be calling, and you never know when somebody that's mentally well put together starts looking for answers. Here's your answer. What do you need to do? You basically need to turn to somebody who is a New Testament example, and I'm going to tell you who that is. Paul, who was being called Saul a while ago, he is an individual who is your New Testament example. How do you be saved? Well, here's a blind man named Saul. He's actually seen Jesus, and he's still having trouble. He's still waiting for somebody to tell him what to do. And what happens? A man comes into the dangerous area where Saul is. Saul, beat you man or woman, drag you back to Jerusalem. And this individual named Ananias, Saul saw him in a vision, coming to talk to him about what he needed to do after seeing Jesus. Man, you're talking about what I need to do after I see Jesus. If I see Jesus, I'm saved. No, that's not the truth. Look at all the people that saw Jesus while he was on the face of the earth. Well, Pastor Penn said that Jesus is the same today, yesterday, and forever. Well, how come it is that all those people were not saved upon seeing Jesus? And you basically would say, if I see Jesus in a vision, people tell you all the time, if I see Jesus in a vision, I saw Jesus, I talked to God, I'm saved. Oh, that's how it was? That wasn't how it was in the New Testament. Saul saw Jesus. You all know he saw him on the road to Damascus, and what's he doing? He's still needing help. Ananias gets there, down to see a dangerous man, and he sees him praying, and he says, now why tarriest thou? Arise and be baptized and wash away thy sins, calling on the name of the Lord. What you need to do is you need to do what Saul said to do. Saul strike you blind. Michael Penn, he ain't going to do nothing. He's going to have to deal with calls tomorrow, trying to figure out who's going to be sick next, so y'all can all come back to church. I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense here to me tonight. You get out of that church that's not meeting. You get involved with somebody who's in the Church of Christ that'll tell you the truth that you can reach on a cell phone tonight during the storm, and they'll tell you what to do. What do you need to do? You need to ask for, what does the Bible say? God bless you. Good night.